Hi guys. So I've heard, and I believe it's true, that you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes. And this weekend I'm going to Harvard Business School to speak to some women about negotiation. And I'm going to tell them about a negotiation that failed, but taught me a whole bunch. Negotiating is advocating for yourself and your ideas, for the things you want and the things you need. And in my situations, it's often advocating for my clients in my cases. So in this particular case, I represented a doctor whose patient had a nerve injury after surgery, and we believed it was a recognized risk of the procedure. The patient's attorney, of course, believed it was due to the doctor, so we went to trial. And at the trial, the jury could not come to a decision. They were hung. They could not all agree on a verdict, and so it was a mistrial. And the jury wanted to talk to us, and so we went back to talk to them afterwards, and we found out that 8 of the 12 agreed with me and my doctor that the doctor had done everything right, and 4 of the 12 had agreed with the patient, and that meant that we were almost even. And that's dangerous for both sides. So we were getting ready to do another trial, because that's what happens, you have to do it all over again, and we started talking on our side about the potential for settlement. And we decided to make an offer because of the risk of losing. And so we made an offer to the patient's attorney, and he was pleased with the offer. I could tell by his body language and his tone and his facial expressions, and he said he'd take it back to his client. He came back and said, she said no. And that was strange because it was a good offer and there was risk on both sides and we just couldn't figure it out. And we went in front of the judge and the judge brought in the patient and encouraged the patient to take the offer, and the patient said no. And here's the thing that I learned from that case. 2 things actually. One is that we were not seeing the case through the patient's perspective. And 2 is that we weren't using enough creativity. Let me show you what I mean. The patient was from another country. And she had been here for years, but never had learned to speak the English language. And when we were on trial the first time, there was a translator there. So she was chatting with the translator all day long, and she was able to understand everything that was going on in the room because of the translator. In addition, she had moved here with her husband, who had since passed away, and all of her family was in another country. She did not have a lot of interaction day to day with anyone because she was no longer working. She pretty much spent her days at home alone. But at trial, she got to come in and she would chat with me in our limited ability to communicate. She'd chat with her translator, she'd chat with her attorney, she would engage, she would watch the proceedings with a huge amount of attention. And I truly believe, having watched her in both trials, that we were never going to settle the case the way that we tried to settle it. If we saw things through her perspective, I think what we would see is that she wanted the trial. She wanted the opportunity to speak with her translator and to interact with people for a full 2 weeks and the excitement of the courtroom. Ultimately, we won that case and she lost, but I believe that in her mind, she won because she got all of that interaction. She got all of that communication. She got all of that feedback. Now, had we seen things through her perspective, we wouldn't have even wasted time negotiating, or we would have been really creative in the way that we negotiated. Perhaps her attorney could have found her a place during the day that she could go and communicate with other people who spoke her language. Perhaps part of the settlement monies could have been used to do that. When you are seeing things through the other's perspective in your negotiations, you are automatically at an advantage. And when you add creativity, you are much more likely to be able to negotiate to a win. And in my case, we couldn't, but we still won, because sometimes advocating means negotiating, and sometimes it does mean that you have to go to war and try the case. Either way, creativity and perspective are going to help you to win. I'm so excited to share that with these women at Harvard, and I will be back next week with a little bit more on how you can better advocate to win in your lives with your juries. Have a good weekend.